SDA championship game. The Chicago Bulls were down by 1 basket. The ball was passed to Jordan. He made a fancy move to go around his defender, and the defender was so bluffed he fell to the floor. Jordan sets his side on the basket and releases just as the buzzer sounds, sinking a perfect shot, winning the game and the championship. For a lot of you, these are the scenes you remember. Slam dunks taking off from the free throw line, the fame, the popularity, the commercials, the championships. But I'd like to share with you a story you might not have heard. It involved a young boy by the name of Cornelius. He was a thin, extremely quiet boy. His mother and her boyfriend were in prison. They had tortured, abused, and starved Cornelius and his 4-year-old brother, Laddie. The police discovered the abuse in time to save Cornelius' life, but it was too late for his 4-year-old brother. The two great loves of his life were reading and basketball. The newspaper reporter who'd been writing of the story mentioned in one of his columns that Cornelius had a passion for basketball. Steve Schoenwald, a vice president of the Chicago Bulls, called the reporter. Though tickets to Bulls games were without exception sold out, Schoenwald said that if Cornelius would like to come to a game, he would be sure there were tickets available. The reporter took him to the game, and I tell the story from his perspective. To every Chicago youngster who follows basketball, the stadium is a shrine. Think of where Cornelius once was, locked up, tormented, and hurt. And now he was in the stadium, about to see his first Bulls game. We walked down a stairway until we were in a lower-level hallway. Cornelius stood between us. Then a door opened, and a man came out. Cornelius looked up, and his eyes filled with a combination of total awe and disbelief. Cornelius tried to say something, but the man helped him out by speaking first. "Hi, Cornelius," he said. "I'm Michael Jordan." Jordan knelt down and spoke quietly with Cornelius. He made some jokes and told stories about basketball, and he didn't rush. You have to understand, for a long time, the only contact Cornelius had had with adults were ones who wanted to hurt and humiliate him. And now Michael Jordan was saying, "Are you going to cheer for us today? We're going to need it." Jordan went back into the locker room to finish dressing for the game, and I walked Cornelius back upstairs to the court. There was one more surprise waiting. Cornelius was given a red shirt of the kind worn by the Bulls ball boys. He retrieved balls for the players from both teams as they warmed up. Then, as the game was about to begin, he was led to Jordan's seat on the Bulls bench. That's where he was going to sit, right next to Jordan's seat. During the minutes of the game when Jordan was out and resting, he'd be sitting with him. And when Jordan was on the court playing, he'd be saving his seat. At one point, late in the game, Jordan took a pass and sailed into the air and slammed home a basket. And there, just a few feet away, was Cornelius Abraham, laughing out loud with joy. As we applauded the incredible basket, the act of kindness that Jordan showed Cornelius was receiving the applause of heaven. You see, greatness in the kingdom of heaven is measured by small acts of kindness. Let's turn in our Bibles to Matthew 25:31 through 40. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit in his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the goats from the sheep. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we go see you when you were sick or in prison?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." In the countryside, sheep and goats mingled during the day. At night, they were often separated. Sheep tolerated the cooler air, while goats had to be herded together for warmth. As is typical with Hebrew poetry, we don't have any gray areas here. Picture is painted sharply in black and white. All men fall into one of two classes, symbolically, sheep and goats. The sheep, identified as the righteous, are given the right hand, which is the place of power and honor. The distinction between sheep and goats is easy for anyone to make. There are a few similarities, but not a ton. But when it comes to people at the end of time, how is this distinction made? The righteous, represented by the sheep, are identified in three ways. 1. The righteous provided others with simple acts of kindness. Notice the simple responses God noted in the actions of the righteous: giving someone a drink, something to eat, clothes to wear, and a visit. These are simple and basic things with no pomp, no plaque, and no prestige. But God's followers are not identified by saying, "Lord, Lord," and repeating verbal expressions of their faith. They are noted for numerous acts of self-sacrificing service, rendered unobtrusively to their fellow men. In 1921, Lewis Laws became the warden at Sing Sing prison. No prison was tougher than Sing Sing during that time. But when Warden Laws retired some 20 years later, that prison had become a humanitarian institution. Those who studied the system said credit for the change belonged to Laws. But when he was asked about the transformation, here's what he said: "I owe it all to my wonderful wife, Catherine, who is buried outside these walls." Catherine Laws was a young mother with 3 small children when her husband became the warden. Everybody warned her from the beginning that she should never set foot inside the prison walls. But that didn't stop Catherine. When the first prison basketball game was held, she walked, with her 3 kids, into the gym and sat in stands with the inmates. Her attitude was, "My husband and I are going to take care of these men, and I believe they will take care of me. I don't have to worry." She insisted on getting acquainted with them and the records. She discovered one convicted murderer was blind, so she paid him a visit. Holding his hand in hers, she said, "Do you read Braille?" "What's Braille?" he asked. Then she taught him how to read. Years later, he would weep in love for her. Later, Catherine found a deaf mute in prison. She went to school to learn how to use sign language. Many said that Catherine Laws was the body of Jesus that came alive in Sing Sing from 1921 to 1937. Then she was killed. There's some dispute on whether it was a car crash or on a hike or what killed her, but anyway. The next morning, Lewis Laws didn't come to work, so the acting warden took his place. It seemed almost instantly the entire prison knew something was wrong. The following day, her body was resting in a casket in her home, 3/4 of a mile from the prison. As the acting warden took his morning stroll, he noticed a huge crowd of the toughest, hardest-looking criminals gathered like a herd of animals at the main gate. He came closer and noticed tears of grief and sadness. He knew how much they had loved Catherine. He turned and faced the men. "All right, men, you can go. Just be sure and check in tonight." And then he opened the gate, and a parade of criminals walked, without a guard, the 3/4 of a mile to stand in line to pay their final respects to Catherine Laws, and every one of them checked back in. Number 2, the righteous use their resources to be a blessing. An unusual part of this judgment scene is the way those on the left hand try to excuse themselves on the ground that they had no opportunity to do so. They ask in a tone of injured innocence in Matthew 25:44, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you?" The question is in a more condensed and agitated manner than the surprise query of the righteous who are disclaiming the credit given to them. Notice the king's response in verse 45. "Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did not for the least of these, you did not do it to me." As in the parable of the 10 virgins and of entrusted wealth, so it is in this judgment scene. It is not so much wrongdoing that evokes the severest censure, but the utter failure to do good. The sin of omission is seen as a much more serious sin than the sin of commission. Just as the door is shut on the foolish virgins for their negligence, so those on the left are lost for failing to notice the many opportunities for showing kindness which have been given them. I'm reminded of the story in the Bible of the rich man who had an abundant harvest. He had no place to put it as his barns were already full. So he planned to tear down the old barns and build bigger ones. Note God's response in Luke 12:20-21. "But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God.'" God blesses us in order that we may be a blessing to others. All of us have been given something that we may share with others. If we don't take the opportunities we have to be a blessing and squander or hoard these for ourselves, they will eventually be taken from us. How then do we become rich toward God? Simply by passing those blessings on to others. You will find, as you look back on life, that the moments that stand out are the moments when you have done things for others. Henry Drummond. Do you desire genuine vitality in your spiritual walk with God? Perhaps it's time for action. Time to provide acts of kindness for others. When we focus on self and our own problems and frustrations too much, spiritual energy is drained. Serving others in Christ-like ways can light a spark in our spiritual life. As James chapter 2 verse 20 states, faith without works is dead. To have a vibrant walk with God, it takes more than belief. It takes action. Number 3, the righteous are surprised by the significance of their actions. Neither the sheep nor the goats are surprised at the place the king assigns them. They are surprised at the reason the king gives. The punchline of this parable is found in verse 40. Inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. The surprise of the righteous at this statement makes it impossible to think that the works of righteousness win salvation. How they treated the least of these was not for the purpose of being accepted or rejected from the kingdom. The sheep did not show love to gain heaven. Jesus is interested here in a righteousness of the whole person, a righteousness from the heart. True disciples will love one another and serve the least brother with compassion. In so doing, they unconsciously serve Christ. Those who have little sympathy for the gospel of the kingdom will remain indifferent and, in so doing, reject Jesus. Paul learned this at his conversion. On a trip to Damascus to persecute and destroy Christians, he encountered Christ. The voice from heaven declared, I am Jesus, who you are persecuting. Acts 9:5. When we respond to others, we are responding to Christ. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said it very well in his book, The Cost of Discipleship. The bearers of Jesus' word receive a final word of promise for their work. They are now Christ's fellow workers and will be like him in all things. Thus they are to meet those to whom they are sent as if it were Christ himself. They are bearers of his presence. They bring with them the most precious gift in the world, the gift of Jesus Christ. We are Christ's bearers before others in our homes, in the church, in school, at work, in the whole world. What would happen if, every day, we were always conscious of this truth and did our best to put it into practice? We are Jesus' ambassadors to others on this earth. We are his hands and his feet to be a blessing to all those we come in contact with. My appeal today is for us to recognize that we are Jesus' hands and feet here on this earth. As we have a special music, may God place in your heart a compassion and desire to serve others.
Bye.